Oh, hello everyone, kia ora, welcome. I am not Carl, I am Jessica, but as you know, Carl couldn't make it, so I am going to be moderating this interesting panel and also speaking about the topic because I'm also working in games and Web3. So we have a really interesting and unique perspective because all of us here are working in this space, as are some of the people in this audience. And I know it can be a controversial topic, but we really want to share the experiences that we've had and what we're working on and the opportunities and why we're excited about games and Web3 and the possibility that it has for us here in New Zealand. You know, whether you're just starting out or you're an established studio. And so just going to kick off with each of the panelists introducing themselves and what they are doing in this space. So Ben, shall we start with you?
We shall. Kia ora everybody. My name is Ben Foreman and I have for the past decade run a creative agency called Wrestler. That makes like entertainment and content for brands mostly, but in the last few years we've started to explore our own content and original storytelling in this kind of Web3 space. We have been playing around with VR and AR for the past probably like 8 years, so a good amount of time. And my wife Kat and I, we run the business and we've always been interested in new technology and new ways of storytelling essentially. And so when we first met as a couple, we always had this weird like dream of creating a young adult sci-fi fantasy world together. That was just something we bonded over. And when COVID happened, we were like, this seems like a good time to give this a go. So we started dreaming up this world. And what we wanted to do with this world is create this kind of interconnected story where it would span from anything from kind of graphic novels to, you know, live action feature films, games, the whole thing, but plan it from day one so that there was this like interconnectivity of the whole thing and cause and effect, so that when you interacted with the graphic novel, that would have an impact on the feature film and all these different touch points that would create a more kind of immersive entertainment experience over the whole thing. And so we started exploring that and it got really fucking complicated really quick, and we were like, holy shit, and there was all these different webs going on, all these different directions, and we were like, oh my god. And then we kind of discovered NFTs, and we were like, oh, this is interesting as a mechanic of connecting the different parts of this world together. And so we started going down that kind of rabbit hole, and that's now where we are essentially, is developing this cross-platform world that spans from NFTs to an animated series to graphic novels to metaverse experience or experiences to mobile game to eventually live action feature films. And this is like, we're going to do this over like 10 years or more sort of thing. This is like our big kind of, you know, the big life project. And we essentially are really excited about what Web3 does for like data ownership and the kind of user experience in this whole journey, and what it can do for ownership, for digital assets, for that whole connective piece of I guess cause and effect and all that sort of thing. So yeah, that's kind of what we're up to at the moment.
There's going to be so many questions that I'm sure people are going to have for Ben about this. I do. It's awesome. I love big visions, and you guys have always had that and have always been at the forefront of doing interesting, innovative things. And I think that's probably where a lot of us, myself having worked in virtual reality as well for 5 odd years and then working in 5G, I think, you know, when new things come out, it's an opportunity for us to explore them. And it may not be that they work for everything and for everyone, but it's being open to innovation and trying things, which is really cool. All right, Lenny, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you are working on?
Yeah, hey, so my name is Lenny. I work for a company called Altered State Machine. Altered State Machine is a company that started with the vision of the human revolution in the effect of AI, artificial intelligence, and how AI can be used to empower people to truly represent society as a whole and create a real digital platform where, we're truly democratized and we're truly, represented. So my role at Altered State Machine is a product owner, also a digital producer. We're currently developing gamified experiences. We truly believe that the key to adoption, to understanding in such a complex technical field is to really create interactive, inclusive experiences for people through gamification, through lore, through story. So that's our current focus. Truly, it can be, you have to come from a compassionate angle because it can truly be jarring with new technology to really adopt just going and minting an NFT, that's more of a native experience, it's a lot less accessible to the common user, and getting them to really understand and really adopt our vision and really, want to embark on the journey of that revolution with AI starts there for us.
Thanks, Lenny. For those of you new to ASM, they have been really fantastic around really educating people around the whole Web3 space, and it's well worth jumping into their Discord if you're interested in learning more. There's a lot of Twitter Spaces, AMAs, and have really helped with that kind of education piece, and also have Carmen, who is a fabulous female leader and has really worked on community, and I've really noticed that having worked alongside some of the partner companies of ASM, and community seems to come first and be at the heart, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Community is absolutely first. What we're developing is for the user, it's for the people, it's for our digital presence, and that starts with the community. We have a whole ecosystem. We're really trying to, it kind of boils down to that concept of interoperability, to all be on the same page, to agree to the same values, to really uplift each other in this space and develop on the technology from that angle.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. Awesome, thank you. All right, and now Dan, would you like to introduce yourself and your project?
Cool, kia ora. Dan Millwood from Gamefruit, and so I'm the CEO and the founder of Gamefruit. I'm also the games manager for New Zealand On Air, and I'll just quickly cover that one off. That means I get to help people apply for funding to have their games funded by New Zealand On Air, and then I get to help people in other studios work on the milestones through making their games through to completion and getting them published, and on the different NZ On Air funded platforms. So that's really cool. I really enjoy working with other studios in that capacity, and looking forward to talking to people about that as well. My role in Gamefruit has been, and what Gamefruit is all about helping the next generation of young people become game developers. So if you kind of grew up in the generation of using Scratch, instead of just throwing our kids at JavaScript or Python, we throw them into Gamefruit, which is a platform for making 2D games, and it's more of a natural kind of progression. And we kind of work with the Ministry of Education, we work with NZQA, there's heaps of game studios in New Zealand we work with, and we make learning resources about how to make their games. So if you're a student in a school in New Zealand, and man, I wish I had this when I was a kid, but you could have a class on how to make the algorithm in, say, the mini metros or something like that, how to code those NPCs to kind of board the train and then get off the train. And so kids love that, obviously. They're like, woohoo, we get to make games. I love doing that. It's all about, it's like this awesome superpower of being able to take what we love as game creators and give that to kids so that they engage with their education. And I'm really interested in how we can empower kids to learn about this technology, the Web3 technology, and use it ethically, effectively, and in ways that benefit them. In years past, there's been scaremongering around AI and will the robots take over? and probably not. And so if we're like teaching our kids to program ethical AIs, I sort of tend to look at this Web3 space through that same lens. And so yeah, I'm really interested and excited about how this emergent technology can benefit our kids, and maybe even put some money on their plate. I've always been into this thing, pocket money 2.0 I call it, getting our kids to kind of make games, put them on itch.io, try and sell them in the App Store, make some money. And I believe that there's opportunities to do this as well, but in the Web3 space. So I'm pushing that.
Yeah, I love it, and thank you for what you've already created. I think so many of us will have, particularly as a parent of an 8-year-old boy, have come across the technology you've created, and what you've enabled for schools around New Zealand is so commendable. It's really awesome, and that ethical piece is so important, and we need great leaders like you who have already built fantastic stuff for youth to be here from the start, so that we can be about good. In terms of me and what we're doing at Beyond, goodness is kind of the key point. We want to advocate for the goodness, we want to make the goodness, we want to share the goodness. And for us, we have built a virtual world called the Burrows, which was in partnership with Non-Fungible Labs, or Fluff World. If you're in the NFT space, they sold 10,000 of these characters that people could buy on the blockchain, and it was a huge success, and it sold out really, really quickly. And then I knew Aaron McDonald, brothers with David, and from back when I was at the Biz Dojo, so 6 odd years ago, I ran the Biz Dojo, and a lot of what we did there was about hosting events, and we, at the same time of setting up the VR AR Association, Mark Pascal was setting up the Blockchain Association. And so I got exposed to blockchain then, and was really excited about the opportunity that blockchain had for us. I'm not, centralization and, just all of that just didn't make sense to me, and the blockchain made sense. So I was very excited when we were approached a year or so ago to collaborate and build these virtual worlds for these rabbits, fluff characters, that they could explore and be in, and were sold as NFTs. And we were very fortunate. We did it to partner and for them to sell out within 30 minutes, and for them to then be traded. And what's pretty cool about NFTs is that you as creators, you keep getting royalties. So it's not like when you just say sell a piece of art to somebody and then, that artist doesn't continue to get revenue when that artist sold to somebody else. We continued to get revenue from that. So that recurring revenue piece suddenly, is a big deal, and really exciting, and the community around it just are so excited and love it. And for us, we're all about building virtual worlds that make people go wow and just are excited, and so that's what we have created, and just recently made that into a multiplayer app that's, it's about to be multiplayer, and then a VR version of the Burrows as well. So that's kind of where we're sitting. Like Ben, we started in, we've done a whole lot of different things, innovating, and whether that's virtual reality, augmented reality, 5G, and so there is often questions and hesitancy about new stuff. My mum was like, 5G, what are you doing? And so once I could talk her through it, she was like, oh, okay, that makes sense, okay. We're not all gonna shrivel up and die from it, and so there is just a piece of education that had to go on there. So so that's what we're working on. So now we've kind of all talked about the space. Ben, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about how a multimedia experience works with Web3.
If you could tell me, that'd be great. That's what we're trying to work out, really. I think what's exciting about, the world of Web3 And anybody who like tells you they're an expert in the space is an idiot, because there are no experts and it's all being worked out at the moment, and like you get to be a part of this and we get to be a part of it. And that's essentially, yeah, we're trying to work out like how can we build these worlds and utilize this cool technology to do that. I think what's interesting about like Web3, the way that I see it, is that it is really, it's kind of like a way of thinking. And it's the Web3 mindset is like very proactive in a sense that Web 1 is like passive in that you kind of like got served stuff, right? Like someone posted a blog and then you just read the blog. That was it. Web 2 is like interactive, where someone would post something, but then you can post back. And so there's that back and forth. And then Web 3 is like where you're in control, where you get to decide where your data goes, how it's used, how, like I get to decide if I want to be advertised to, I get to decide if people want access to my data, I get to decide if I allow people into my space. All these types of things which I think create a much healthier, positive kind of web experience, essentially. So we're trying to think about how we bring these kind of philosophies and ideas into this world that we're building. And the world we're building is based on, is very values driven. The work that we do at Wrestler is all about trying to push the collective consciousness forward, and the world that we're building, this young adult sci-fi world, is the themes in it are around like environmental, impact, and racial and gender equality, and balance is kind of the key theme running through the whole thing. So it all kind of aligns with like the Web3 kind of values as well. And so, yeah, I think that's it from like a values point of view. Technically, I think what's really cool is what I was saying before, this piece of like NFTs being this through point of kind of, I guess it's because it's on the ledger, and because it's, you can, how do I say this? So essentially what we want to do is create, everyone will have like their NFT that is a part of our world, so they'll have like their character, and then whenever they interact with any part of our world, that will essentially be recorded on the ledger. And so everything you do is essentially builds up more kind of like data onto your NFT. And so you as the user will build up over time this whole kind of record of what you're doing. And then that is essentially like you own it, so you could sell that. And so there's a whole bunch of value that you can build up in that NFT. And then that kind of, I think what's exciting about that is that if we're spending like hours and hours a day in these virtual environments, online, in these digital spaces, that time should be worth something. And I think that's what's really exciting about NFTs, is that it actually kind of like gives you a tool to be able to turn that time into something that you get to decide what you do with, and you can sell that or trade that or whatever. I don't know if that made any sense.
Yeah, no, totally. And, my son likes to spend a lot of money on Fortnite and other games, buying his skins and his emotes and whatnot, and then he's sick of it a week later, and I'm like, damn, I wish I could sell that. And there's probably some really unique ones in there and some rare ones, and that's kind of a lot of what NFTs enable people to collect. A lot of people are collectors, and they've come from backgrounds like, for me, I used to collect Garbage Pail Kids cards, and My Little Ponies, and there's all sorts of characters and collections out there that people are passionate about, and so there's a lot of people in the community who are collectors and traders, right? And they want to, trade on that.
Just to jump in on that, so it's like, okay, so I've been a lifelong gamer. I love playing video games. I spend all my free time. And it's kind of the idea, like just to really bring it down to the core of the user and how the user could benefit from something like an NFT is all that data, all that time, all that grinding, and then the middleman can just switch off the server and all your work is gone. But what if you owned that asset? What if you could derive outside value from that asset? What if you could use that to represent yourself in an open digital world? That's what it is to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And when people have that ownership, they are utilizing that ownership. So there are so many people out there who have bought an NFT, whether it's a Bored Ape or whether it's a fluff or whatever it might be, and they are using it to make their own content, whether it's to put that character on skateboards and sell merchandise, or whether it's to make an animated short film, or whether it's to create a digital star. You know, people are creating music and using these avatars that they now have the commercial rights to, which is kind of also something I think is pretty kind of cool. Any other comments on that? Or otherwise, I've Dan, you know, having worked, you know, working with youth, and you know, you talked a little bit about that. How do you feel about marketing Web3 to youth?
I guess I'm less about marketing Web3 to youth, but more about educating them around different technologies so that our kids are creating games, but also apps that provide some sort of value back to a consumer market, maybe an educational market, whatever kind of market, and setting them up for success. That's sort of what drives me. And there's other cool things in this space too. Like the first time I heard about NFTs, I was probably like everyone else going, what? This is insane. But the more I kind of dug into it and the more research I did, and I've listened to thousands of hours, maybe hundreds of hours of podcasts on the subject. So I feel like I'm a bit of an expert. And, well, no, I'm not an idiot, at least, at minimum. And what I keep seeing is the potential for people to make cool stuff. And I think to the NFT thing, humans are innately collectors of things. We like to hoard things and have things. And this is just a moment in time where this technology is a decent enough technology for serving that purpose. And it doesn't have to be about people spending hundreds of thousands or hundreds or millions of dollars on NFTs. I don't care about any of that. But I'm kind of interested in the utility that NFTs can provide people. With a couple of lines of code, we can create kind of really interesting NFT token-gated spaces online, which is kind of cool. The kids that we work with, they get their kicks out of making that sort of stuff. And I think it would be harder in a lot of these other technologies. So yeah, I want kids to be making cool stuff. That's kind of, and this is the next generation of cool stuff.
Yeah, I just want to say it's about the vision. It's not about the database that you use. It's just currently, while we're on the bleeding edge and, you know, we're developing and we're learning about it every day, you know, there's issues that we have to address. No one is an expert because we're literally right at the cusp of it. It's just about propelling your vision, and currently this is the best space we have to really utilize that and empower it.
Absolutely, and I think that's it, right? We're explorers. We're exploring it ourselves. We're learning ourselves. We are by no means experts in this matter, and you know, we all come from different kind of backgrounds. You know, whether you've just you've graduated, was it a year ago from university? You know, whether it's VR or education. You know, we're just so super interested in how this can be used, and. Yeah, so I think it's really fascinating. But
and can I just jump in on that?
Yeah.
I think like often people think Web3 when they hear that, then they think like NFTs, and when they hear NFTs, they think like JPEGs essentially. But like that's not it. Like NFTs are a smart contract which can be linked to any digital asset or any asset essentially. So an NFT can unlock all sorts of things, and it's the technology which I think is the really exciting part.
yeah, absolutely. Whether it's for tickets or it's a marriage certificate, I mean, that's all sorts of ways that it can be used. But I guess for us, right, it's about games, or for us at Beyond, it's about virtual worlds and how they intersect. And I think what we've found really interesting is there's this whole new eager community and people out there who want to play in this space, who are already, they might be crypto natives, they might have been like involved in cryptocurrency and blockchain for many, many years, like I mentioned, people 6 odd years ago who were running workshops about it, and really kind of bleeding edge then. But there's this huge audience out there who are eager. And I am excited because we have so much talent here to make games and make ethical experiences with good values, that there's an opportunity for us to be leading in this space and to be doing the good stuff in this space, because it's coming, whether we like it or not, it's here. And the technology is only going to evolve and be more environmentally friendly. All of that is happening. And so this feels like an opportunity. I don't know if anyone else has any other comments on that.
I think like what I've noticed in the last kind of 2 years is that like there is a massive convergence finally happening between all of the different sectors, from like films to games to like, intense sort of tech and all that sort of stuff, and blockchain. They're all finally converging into a place where it's like, it's all about the story and it's all about like the worlds that they're building. And that for me is what's super exciting about this space, is kind of like finally everyone's starting to like really play together.
Yeah, it's about that infinitely scalable, open, metaverse, that digital space that we can all share and build on and really develop together, where every individual has ownership and the ability to represent themselves.
Yeah, I kind of like to think of this as almost money 2.0. Like, if you go way back and you look at the original vision of blockchain and the global financial crisis that was happening when Satoshi came up with that, the values behind that were fairly sound, I'd like to argue to anyone. And so it's come from I think a solid, an honourable place. And I think there's always going to be some bad actors. And I think it's up to us to kind of, make sure that there's more good actors out there than bad ones. And they don't get tolerated in the NFT space either. Like, they pretty quickly get booted out of, the marketplaces. And what I see is brands popping up, and brands with audiences that want to play games. And I want to make games. So, you're not going to tell me to not make games. I think that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Brands, there's so many people that gamification, right, in all industries has blown up over the last 5 years, where people, that want that in their products or whatever they are making. And so, this is a really big opportunity. Lenny, I know the AI part is kind of like quite interesting and unique in what ASM have been doing. How does the ownership of that work in terms of what you are doing in Web3?
I think, so this is a pretty big question. So I think you kind of wind it back down to how does Web3 propel AI? And the answer to that is ownership. Being able to own your data, the data that you contribute, instead of having, companies, corporates, whatever, learning from you, taking your data and selling it back to you. You get to make the decisions. You get to, use that to your benefit, use that to your will, use that to collaborate. So the power of collaborative data is that, we can infinitely scale with collaborative data. It's more data than any one company can ever contribute. There is obviously challenges with it in Web3. Things like inference, those are all challenges that we're openly accepting and working together to tackle. But it really just, it comes down to empowering the democracy of it, allowing people to really come together and contribute their personality, represent themselves. It's, AI is our digital future. It is, what we're going to lean on in the future to really propel us and propel our visions, propel our cultures, just in a digital space. So I think the Web3 is the technology and the place for that, because it's read, write, so you create, but you own.
And I think the values, going back to that values piece of Web3 is so important, because like Web3 is generally the community who are pushing forward into the Web3 space are very big on representation and equality, and like we have to get diverse voices creating the AI, because if we don't, it's going to be an AI that's been fueled by a 35-year-old white dude, And so like how can we create an AI that is representative of the world essentially, and that's so important.
Yeah, totally. I mean, think about the kind of demographic that owns a Tesla, who feed that AI and train that AI. That's a very specific type of person, and doesn't represent, maybe even a lot of people in this room, doesn't represent me. So yeah, really being able to collaborate, but also opaquely own your own data, and contribute that to the digital society.
I've also seen a really big movement where the sector has enabled people who wouldn't necessarily have been able to find a community as easy as other people, to that diversity piece, who might not have had the same privileges as I definitely have had, and are being able to create and make beautiful art and sell that, and then find their community and their network and then build on that. And for me, that's, having gone to the States and spoken on a panel which was all female working in this space, and really diverse people from really different backgrounds and different experiences. It was really exciting that people have an opportunity where I think, it can be hard to get into games, and it can be, feel like quite a privileged place to actually be able to make a game. So I feel like there's a real opportunity there. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add.
I totally agree with that, and I think like what's exciting about this space is the democratization of like access essentially, and not just that, but also like finance, and Web3 is connected into crypto and all those types of things as well, and through crypto you've got DeFi, which is decentralized finance, and that's really opening up like possibilities to a lot of third world nations which traditionally haven't had access to finance and capital. And so you've got like countries like got a friend who just came back from Ethiopia and Kenya, and there's like these amazing communities that are building up there that have never been able to have access to this world, and now they're creating incredible art and games and all sorts of stuff, and they're getting paid properly for it as well, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting to think that there's places out there that don't have banks, and how do we share money or value or liquidity with those people? Is it okay that a whole lot of people here who are really privileged to go, nah, sorry, no crypto for you, when they haven't had the access that we've all had and take for granted? So I think there's some really interesting sort of fundamental questions that need to be unpacked more than just, Web3 or NFTs are bad. It's sort of like, okay, let's keep digging.
And with that digging, I feel like this is a good opportunity to open it up to the audience, perhaps, with some questions. And if you've got a question, there's microphones on either side of the room here. So I would ask that you please come and speak into the microphone so that everybody can hear what your question is. This is being recorded as well, so that is probably something that you should know.
And don't be shy.
Yeah.
Ask anything you want.
Yeah.
Challenge us.
Yeah. Hey.
So I must admit I'm Australian, so I don't know the New Zealand consumer laws, but I find it hard to believe New Zealand would have worse consumer laws. How are refunds going to be handled?
How are refunds going to be handled? Do you mean specifically around like NFTs or a game?
Or any of it?
Because I guess, well, an NFT, you own it. That's the thing, it's on the blockchain. You own it once you've purchased it, so it is yours. So it's for you to then sell. So I don't know if you've got...
If you wanted a refund, though, I guess the consumer law within that country is still the consumer law. And so if you've sold somebody something and they have cause to ask for a refund, then it's the same as any other product, essentially. So the law, and I think that's what's interesting about this space, is like the laws don't change. Just because it's in the digital space the normal consumer laws still apply.
How do you take it back then? Because everything you've been saying is how it's about this permanence of these items. How do you take the item back?
You would just transfer it back through the blockchain.
Okay, and then the customer is technically illiterate. How do they, what's the process?
The process is essentially just a transfer, really.
And they would have made that same transfer in the first place to buy it, so they're not that illiterate.
So they would have had a wallet, and they would have had their own address, which is a unique code on the blockchain, which so that you know that that's yours, and that would have been, you would have had to give that to, when you purchase something, and then it's all very transparent. If anything, it's more transparent who owns what, where it sits, than in other areas. So yeah, it could just be transferred back.
Yeah.
Have you ever tested any of this?
Well, we transfer things all the time, using on the blockchain.
Yeah.
I haven't had to give anyone personally a refund, though.
There's heaps of projects that have done that, though. If people are like debuzz on it, then they're like, okay, cool, we'll give back.
Yeah, I understand the hesitation with kind of what people are calling a trustless transaction and trade system, but there are guardrails. There does have to be some actual control and some actual protection against users from it, because there are malicious actors. I'm sure we all know, especially in the crypto and NFT space lately. In any space, really. I mean, the majority of crimes are committed with fiat. I definitely understand the concern.
So probably more people's lives have been ruined through email scams.
This is very true.
Those NZTA ones, they always get me.
And then so many
Those
text
damned
message ones
IRD
now
ones,
as well. Anyone else got a question that they'd like to ask? Yes?
So, I know it's...
Could you, just bring that up a little bit closer, or maybe, is that on?
It's on.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I'll try talking louder, that hopefully will get there. So, I know there's been a lot of malware that can be posted onto NFT blockchains. There's been a lot of digital art from other artists being posted on. But I'm actually really interested in being able to remove elements from blockchains and what tools are available to do that, because what I find is what's quite common is that you actually have your privacy being posted up there, but not having the right to remove data is actually critically breaching New Zealand's privacy laws, and not being able to maintain, edit and remove that data, even if it's, even if it's not a copyright issue, if it's just someone simply posting up a picture that had, say, your child in it, that quite often the case that people will post photos of you but not have your permission to post your face and get market from it. And we've had this case particularly with a German artist who took Mari Moko off a person, and he marketed that, and taking someone's identity, taking their mana of who they are and who their family is, and then posting it up as an NFT and making money from that when it's not their own is such a huge problem. So I was wondering, what sort of tools are you guys looking at developing to enable removals from the NFT and blockchains?
There's, it's like everyone sort of said thus far, it's a new space and new tools are being created. And so I'm aware of burning NFTs. It's a term used in the space. And do you think that would solve that? Does anyone know more about burning NFTs? I've been listening to this stuff for about a good 9 months, and it's only in the last couple of months has it been really talked about a lot.
In order to burn an NFT, the user who owns the NFT has to approve the burner smart contract. So that can't be done by anyone else.
I think it's more, but I think again to some of the other questions, it's the same, right? If someone's using, appropriating, doesn't have permission, whether it's Coca-Cola or doing an ad and, using the muka or whatever it might be, it's whether it's Web 2 or Web 3, it's the same challenges and same issues. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that's not a Web3 issue, that's a human being a piece of shit issue.
Yeah.
And that's where you need to, that's the problem. I think if your question is like, is that, because that was uploaded, is it always on the blockchain? No, that's not the case. Like, again, the user themselves would have to take that down, but like, that would be the same as the internet as it is today. You know, you'd always have to go to that person. I guess what you're saying potentially is that, like, if it was on Facebook, then Facebook could take it down, right? Whereas if it's like...
It's malware on blockchain simply because at the moment it's retained within the chain itself. And the trouble is that, I guess, working on tools, so sometimes they'll delist elements from the blockchain, but it's still there, and so people can still buy and sell it very much. And so if you had someone, even if it wasn't malware, but if it was just simply the use of someone else's artwork, money can still be made by reselling, and sort of it perpetuates the crime of that invalid use. And I guess for some artists that actually is not just the implications of their art being taken, but as I said with that other case where it's someone's actual personality and their identity being taken as well.
Yes.
So
If it's a privacy issue that comes into play, then we actually don't have a solution for that at the moment. So I was wondering if you guys had anything sort of like a pre-filter check, maybe even on what
Yeah.
goes up on that first, because that's such a huge thing. So.
Lenny, did you have a comment on that?
I just wanted to kind of bring up the idea, one of the most powerful tools in Web3 is decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. These, while they haven't been implemented to their best standard correctly yet, these empower communities to make decisions, to roll back things, to protect the people in the community, and that's one way that we can empower and protect people. There are obviously issues, like technically, you know, when you revert a block, you're going to invalidate everything that comes after it. But those are decisions that can be made, and that's technology that we can develop. And I agree that there should be more of a focus on the protection of the users themselves.
I think that, there does need to be like the development of a lot of these kind of safeguards, and I think I'm hoping that over the next 5 to 10 years there will be a lot more kind of applications that are built to help with things exactly like this, because that's totally an issue that we don't want to see happen.
Absolutely, yeah, couldn't agree more. I think, you know, we as we said, we're not experts, and a lot of us aren't actually making the technology. You know, we're creators, we're storytellers, we're virtual world builders, and so we're utilising the technology, and we're very much on the same page where it's like we want to make sure that those protections are in there, and so always looking to see who's innovating in this space and who's working in this space and doing, you know, and putting and building those tools and doing those things. And it's still early, so there's a lot of space and room for people to be innovating and making what needs to be made to protect us. Yeah. Do we have any other questions out there? Yeah, down here.
Kia ora. Just directed at Lenny. I just brought a fluff and a brain, and I want to know how to use it.
So the question is, he's just bought a fluff and a brain, so a rabbit character and an ASM brain. How does he use it, Lenny?
How do you use it? So fluffs are going to be the first confirmed first official use case for our brains in terms of, aside from our native games, our All-Stars and the Next Legends, but you'll be able to utilize those brains in your fluff if you want to create a digital twin, whatever you want to do with that, and the fluff is your representation, is your form that you decide to choose to put that brain in, to put your AI in.
But in the meantime, isn't there like a gym where you can start training your brain?
That's coming soon. It's coming really soon. Yeah. So we're going to be releasing execution environments, so like gyms, AI gyms, where you can plug in and play, put in your AI and your characters, and go down that path and train them within the context of APA is the first use case.
Okay, so that's still all coming, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and one last, the burrows.
Yes.
Is that just to hang out in? Is that like a...
Yeah.
Okay.
So the burrows are the homes for fluff characters and future characters that are on the blockchain. And so they are digital worlds that you can play in. Will soon be multiplayer. A few people in this audience have been working very hard on that. So you'll be able to invite your friends in and are interactive, and there'll also be a VR version that we're about to release as well. So you'll be able to put on your Oculus Quest and make it and explore your burrow in VR. So yeah, that's coming.
Could you turn your burrow into a business?
You could, yeah, because you own it. So you could rent it out, you could host parties in it, you could do charity events, like that's kind of, it's yours and you own it. Yeah.
With the fluff or the bunny?
One more question. I love that, you get one more.
Just recently they brought the legs out to attach to them. How do you do it? I don't know.
All right, so yeah, so I mean they're 3D animated characters, and when they were first sold, they were just like cut off, so you didn't have legs. They were 2D, and so now you can download it. So you should be able to go into the Fluff World backend system and download your character. So go into the Fluff World, and you'll be able to log in, and you can download it, and you'll be able to then use that character. If you've got the right software, or you want to connect with some people here that do have the right software and know how to use it, then it's yours. If you want to go make a little game using your fluff, or, create it.
Can you do it through your phone or do you have to?
Yeah, it's best to go PC. All right, next question.
Hi, I don't know if it's on. Is it?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I just wanted to touch on the earlier background, like IP and imagery. Like just to clarify a little bit, right now a lot of the images on blockchains aren't actually on the blockchain. So for now, while blockchains are still early and not super powerful, a lot of what is on the blockchain that's kind of irremovable is actually a link to an image. So you could technically find ways to, through legal or other ways, remove where the image is hosted. Sometimes it's just regular AWS servers or whatever. Remove that image, but the link will still be on the blockchain kind of forever, but what the link links to could be removed. So for now, there are a lot of options potentially, but definitely, as blockchain technology gets more powerful and people actually put full images or full videos onto the blockchain, then a lot of these thoughts will need to be kind of ironed out and thought through. But my question was more around, for crypto, blockchains, Web3, a huge idea is collective ownership and what that means when you have kind of skin in the game or you're kind of that extra level of engagement and involvement. Whether, games or media and IP, how do you guys think about what collective ownership could mean for how you could build those things together or create these new experiences through that?
Can I kick that one off?
Yeah,
so that like Soul Ether is the world we're building, and like that the whole concept of that collective ownership, or we're calling it like creative governance, is built into the whole thing. So we want the community who have this ownership stake in the world to help us build it, essentially. Not to the point where like they're the ones doing all the work, but to make them feel as though this is a world that they have a stake in. And so that'll be kind of gated with like a Discord server, and on that server we'll have a whole bunch of different tiers of kind of like involvement. And so we might have like, if you own a particular character NFT, you get to help decide on kind of that character's journey, and we'll give you kind of, a few different creative options of where that storyline could go. And same with just the whole kind of world in general, and the same with artwork and stuff like that. Like we can look to our community to help inspire us for like how we actually visually explore and build this world. So I think that idea of like co-ownership is super exciting, and eventually what we would love to do is shift our business model into a DAO and be a decentralized autonomous organization where Kat, myself, and our other founders aren't actually the overlords of it. It's like it's owned by the community who love it and who engage in it. I think that's super exciting, and then everybody is the beneficiary of that.
Cool. Next question.
Hi. So one of the things that all four of you have mentioned is that you're not experts in the space and that it's a new technology. I was wondering how old you think the technology is?
I think it's been around a long time, but I don't know. Do you know the exact age? Do you know the answer to that?
Yes.
Great. Would you like to share with the audience?
Blockchain has been around since about 2009-ish in its current form, which makes it 14 years old. And NFTs were first put together at a hackathon in 2015, which makes it 8 years old. I'm wondering, how old does technology have to be before we stop calling it new emerging technology and start actually addressing the problems?
Well, I guess it's the same with VR, right? VR's pretty old as well, and people still address that as a new technology, and it is in many ways a new technology that we're still exploring, developing. So maybe it's always new when it's evolving.
Yeah, and I think it's probably in the context of the mainstream. I think to the mainstream it is completely new, whereas to people who are heavily technical, then it's not new at all. So, words are funny in that you can give different meaning to the exact same word. So
yeah, I think new, especially in the tech space, kind of alludes to the velocity of development happening in the space, to the curve of development, the curve of adoption. It's new in that it's currently bleeding edge. It's it might have been around for a long time, but it's not the same today as it was in 2009.
And we've just seen great adoption, right? And we've seen some fantastic success stories. And so I guess that's why we're excited about it. Yeah. I think that's it. So thank you to our amazing panelists. Really appreciate you coming out, and I'm excited for everyone's projects and for what you're all doing. And thank you for coming and asking those questions, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Hey everyone, can everyone hear me? Can I get like a thumbs up? I see some movement. Awesome, thank you. There's a camera at the back, so I can see some movement. Awesome, thank you everyone for joining and being a part of this panel. Even though it's digital, we've been able to wrangle some really awesome production type people from all around the world in this digital panel. I know most of the talks and panels are in person, so the fact that you're here listening to this digitally means a lot to me and the rest of the panelists, because last year at last year's NZGDC it was mostly digital. There were lots of digital chats. So this is the exception this year. But we couldn't have done this in person anyway because we have people tuning in from all over the world. So first, I just want to go around the group and get interest from everyone on what your role is, what company you work at, what city you're in, and what's your favorite type of beverage, whether you're a coffee, tea, or a green tea kind of person. So starting with you, John.
Hi, my name is John Linvay. I am the producer at Red Hook Studios. We work on a title called Darkest Dungeon. I am currently living in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I recently moved here 2019, right before the pandemic, which was exciting because I came here to work in the office, and then I worked remote for 3 years. Favorite beverage? I'm a cappuccino guy. Like, I really like a good cappuccino, not too much milk, because like the lattes and all that stuff is just too much fluid. You know, I just want to keep it nice and light.
Awesome. And Zia?
Hey, I'm Zia Schlosser. I'm a project manager at Digute Fabric. I'm also juggling a few more contracts on the side. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. Some of you might know me from New Zealand. That's where I used to be. And favorite beverage, I really like coffee. And recently I found out that you can do a cold drip with sparkling grapefruit juice, and it's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
I had that, and it's really good.
Awesome. Right? Over to you, Claire.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Claire Barilla. I'm the producer here at Riff Raff Games in Wellington. I was literally at the conference like an hour ago, and I just wandered back to our office to do this panel. So hopefully I'll see some folks later this afternoon when I come back. My favorite drink is true Wellington fashion is I like a cold brew or cold filter with coconut milk, even in the middle of winter.
Nice. And Ed, over to you.
Hey everyone, my name is Ed Lago, and I'm actually from Brazil, but I'm currently living in Vancouver Island in the beautiful Canada, and I work for Cloudhead Games as active producer, and we're currently working in the Pistol Whip. That's our main game right now. And my favorite beverage is definitely coffee. I'm definitely a coffee person. Coffee for the win.
I see a trend. With coffee and producers. Over to you, Veronica.
I'm Veronica Pesteriano. I am the director of production at Systemera, and we make Astroneer. We are located in currently way too sunny Seattle, Washington. Temperatures we're not used to up here in the Pacific Northwest. And even though I'm not from the Pacific Northwest, I continue the Northwestern and production tradition of coffee being my favorite beverage. Hot all the time. Don't care how many degrees. Hot coffee. That's me.
Awesome. And just quickly, my name is Carl Leduc. I'm games producer at Altered State Machine up in Auckland. And yeah, my favorite beverage is probably, I'm drinking a coffee right now, but I'd say tea is my favorite. I try to drink tea more than coffee, but during those heavy sprints, I think I'm maybe a couple coffees deep every day. So that's kind of interesting that everyone likes coffee. I wonder what that statistic is like globally for all producers, and if you just have to like coffee if you're a producer. Awesome. So first question that I just want to ask is, we have a varied type of producers, people that manage other producers, people that work on different platforms like VR, people that work on projects that are live, some that aren't released yet. So these questions, the aim of this panel, it's called the State of Game Production in 2022. It's going to be very kind of broad, fun. We're going to touch on a bunch of different topics and interesting stories, but we won't really go very deep on a certain topic. So this panel will hopefully just give you an overview of what it's like to work as a producer in the industry at this time. There's definitely a big conversation about remote work and COVID still in the air, and it's been several years now. And that's what I'm really curious about is how long we're going to be having these conversations for until the new normal is actually the new normal. So a first question I just want to ask that I think is really important for any producer or any production team is how you communicate on a daily basis. There's asynchronous communication and synchronous communication, and lots of different tools that are popping up. And I think this would be a good time to just kind of raise any interesting tools that you're using in your teams, or any kind of processes that you think work really well to create like an efficient workflow between your team. So if anyone wants to jump in, just kind of something that works well and how you communicate well with your team at the moment. You go ahead, John.
Oh, go ahead, Veronica. I want to hear what you have to say.
I was going to say that I think for all of us, Miro has come out as this just dark horse app that has taken over a lot of the collaboration and communication. I think it's replaced what I think most people were concerned about losing, moving to remote work and distributed work, which is the opportunity for folks to get together, ideate, brainstorm, leave notes, because everything else up to this point that we've had has felt really formal. It's been Jira tickets, stories, documents, design documents, production documents. But Miro has given us this very light touch, kind of more collaborative, more creative tool that you can use both in person over the shoulder together or remotely. I think that's been, the biggest thing that I've seen come out and one of our biggest and most used tools.
Yeah, I think the whole whiteboards is a very big trend that, a lot of Google's doing it, Zoom's doing it, Figma is another one, Calendly just released a whiteboard kind of feature. And I think that's really interesting. Just before I ask if anyone else has any thoughts, there's two things I forgot to mention at the beginning. One is if you have any questions for any of the panelists, please, I've got the app open up here and I'll have some time at the end to go through those. So if anything interesting comes up that you'd like to ask, please ask a question. And the second thing is, I believe there's live transcripts at the bottom of the screen. They are a bit janky, I think, but at the end of the day, try not to. Yeah, I think they're better than nothing, and I'm really happy that they're there. But apologies if there's anything there that doesn't make any sense or misses the mark of it. I just wanted to point that out because some people might be religiously looking at it, and I think it's doing its best. So on communication, what other tools like Slack or Discord are two other very popular ones? Anything else? What do you use, John?
So we use Slack. We've entertained, or I guess people have tried to float the idea of the Discord, but I've kind of quashed it just for Discord. I feel for us kind of came up a bit too late in terms of it's more like our community-based tool, and everyone's has their personal that's their personal chat protocol for their groups of friends and things like that. And I think the nice thing about Slack is it's very a formal piece of software and not many people use that to hang out with their buds. And so there's a nice mental disconnect of when you're switching modes from work to friends. But I did want to mention something about Slack in particular, because having to rely on it more now that we're all remote has actually raised a lot more concerns and problems that we have with asynchronous communication and kind of it demanding more attention than it deserves at times. I don't know I'm sure maybe others have stories about this, but a lot of times what will happen is you'll have a comment or you'll find something and you want to dig into it. Like, hey, does anyone know about X, Y, or Z, right? And then all of a sudden it will snowball into this hot button issue as if this is the priority of the day when it's really not. And there's you lose out on tone and tenor and what people are trying to deliver. And so we've actually been trying to work a lot in terms of getting people to one, stop using DMs for things that aren't pressing as a means to prevent people from feeling like they have to switch to an issue or jumping around to put out fires. And then two, trying to make sure that everyone understands that if you're not a stakeholder, an immediate stakeholder in the feature or the topic of discussion, to try and give space for those people to discuss first before other people pile on. We don't necessarily want to silo people out, because that's not great either. There's great value in having visibility across all departments and letting people see those discussions happen. But there is a little bit of foot and mouth syndrome that happens when people don't understand hey, you're kind of just muddying the waters by diving in and trying to contribute to the conversation. What you're saying is interesting, but let's wait until there's the appropriate time for that, which is it's a communication process. So it's a soft skills tool that needs to be established, but it's been a growing kind of issue and things that we've actually had to wrestle with more deliberately than we've ever had to do in the past.
Yeah, I think you could probably speak about Slack etiquette and best processes for a good that's the whole panel probably could have been surrounding that. You
see the one little red notification. You're well, I gotta go respond to it. I gotta look at it. When it's no, if someone just came at my desk and said, hey, you got a minute? I'd be no, I'm busy. Come back in 5. But because it's there, and our monkey brains are see things flashing. We're gotta click it. Gotta click that button.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Zia, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think what has surfaced Slack or Discord communication the most is that there needs to be a really good transparency. I've seen often, group starting group DMs when it could actually be in the channel that is associated with the topic. And it would have saved a lot of like middle management and middle communication and, doubling the information. Also, as you mentioned, Slack etiquette and just like in general, like general tidiness, threading conversations, tagging the correct people, etc. I think that's incredibly important and definitely makes a whole lot of difference, just sticking to some norms, I suppose. And one thing I found out, just touching on John said, we often just preface our message with "don't have to act right now" or "this is due next week" or whatever, but I'm just dropping on a message because I just gotta get it out of my chest or whatever, But it's good to do these things. And my studio, Die Gute Fabrik, there is a lot of asynchronous communication because they are in the UK and Denmark and other places in Europe, and I'm obviously in Australia. And so often I do work till midnight, but they still often work later than that. And I found that the schedule button on Slack is really, really good. But then it's good to just like put a little clock on your message so people know it's actually scheduled when they get to it. So little things like that can like make the communication a whole lot of transparent and just easier to navigate.
Yeah, there's some really good advice actually. A lot of people, don't use Slack to its best ability. When they add new features, it takes a while before it gets widely adopted. And I think scheduling is one of those things that people probably don't know the extent that it can be used. And just putting like an emoji in front of a scheduled message is a huge extra bit of communication that could really help. Claire, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think we might be the only one among us that don't actually use Slack. We use Discord. And I have actually used Slack quite significantly for events that I've run in past. And I don't really think that one is like stronger than the other. So I don't really have any like strong hot takes on Slack versus Discord. But I think that the reason why Discord works really well for us is because it has a lot of like the ingrained features that you would do that you need for like streaming builds. Because we have a staff base that is, all over the world, it's very helpful. And that's like the room that I'm in now. It's like our streaming room. We use Discord to like stream builds and playthroughs and stuff to people who are overseas. So we actually had like a pretty big build week last week. So it's really useful being able to just like stream directly from Engine. I've never tried to do that with Slack, so I can't say if it can or not, but that's probably been one of the best like features of Discord for us.
Discord hands down has the better streaming suite in terms of
cool.
So like we will sometimes use Discord for when we're trying to do demos for like remote people, which is funny, right? But Slack has their new thing that's really great is like the huddle thing, which is just for like quick breakouts. Has been nice, but sorry.
And
I think one of my features I do like about Slack is I feel like their thread feature's a bit better.
Yeah.
And that reminds me, Slack has the little pen you can draw in meetings, and it's so good.
That's nice. Discord, if Discord adds it, then they have the best like streaming suite possible because then you can draw and do everything. So like on a Slack vid call, you can like screen share and then other people can draw on your screen and like leave notes. So it's great for things like creative directors and things like that.
Ed, as someone who works on a VR title, I'm curious to know if there's any kind of VR communication tools that the rest of us can't make the most of, but you've found to be more efficient. Like what do you use at Cloudhead Games?
So to be honest with you, because we need to be on headset pretty much every day, we avoid using VR for meetings. It's not only the weather as well. Like summer right now, it's super painful to be in headset, but there is still not a really good app to be doing social interactions. Funny enough, most of our teams are actually on Discord because of the stream feature that John was saying. It's pretty much the best tool we have to. You can actually cast what's in the headset in the browser, and then you can share the browser so everybody can actually see each other play testing. So most of our team. The pandemic was actually kind of a blessing in disguise because Cloudhead was hybrid before, and there is a lot of people who were working remote was not happy because a lot of our conversation was Slack and in the office, and some decisions not communicated properly. So since we went full remote, we actually pushed the team more and more to be more visual. So they actually using less Slack, and every time there's decisions, they actually produce like a doc or a Miro board that can be shared for everybody. So speaking of best practice, here's a good suggestion for everybody. Last month, our general manager and RT person, they actually did a workshop, and now the specialists in Slack, and they made a big training for all of us in the team. Like there was this 1 hour of best practice, and it was super helpful because we learned so much. There's so many things you can use Slack, and you actually can be certified about that. So just a suggestion for everybody that there's a lot of things you even don't know, and someone can actually bring and explain to everybody. But yeah, most of our communication is really quick conversations Slack. Then if it becomes a bigger meeting, it goes to Google Meetings. But play test and just people hang out and showing their work is Discord. So you are in headset, but showing what we're playing, but not meeting a headset, because sadly there is still not a really, okay, this is a good software to use in VR.
Yeah. Oh, that is really interesting. On that kind of just thread of communication, one question I was wondering is, as studios become fully remote and kind of really leaning into remote work in order to get talent that might be outside of their cities and things like that, a question for you, Zia, is working for a studio that is on a completely opposite time zone. Do you think that time zone is a barrier to hiring, the best talent in the industry? Do you think it is kind of localized to like best to hire people that are within your time zone if you can? Or do you think that that's a problem that we will, find a way to work with, is like someone that has a complete opposite time zone?
That's such a loaded question. Honestly, I think, okay, so there's multiple parts to that. Definitely having good preparation around what you're trying to achieve and good communication helps blur any time zone barriers, for sure. For me, I work nights, so I work like 5 to midnight or similar, to be like in the same time zone as UK and AU, or similar at least. And for me, that's actually great. I finally get a daylight to myself to just live my life. And I love it. I wouldn't, and I gotta say, like, being in an office, and I have experience of being in office 9 to 5, 9 to 6. The time that I spend at work after those hours seems so much faster as well. And I am a night owl. Of course, getting like past midnight is getting really damn hard. But even just the evening really, really, really works great for me. And there might be a lot of people that works great for. There might be people that are morning birds and would rather, work really early in the morning. It becomes difficult if there is people in all different time zones and they have to get into a meeting like this one. I can imagine it's some quite not that great hours for some of us. For example, like having a meeting between Australia, America, Canada, and Europe can get pretty difficult. But yeah, I think it's up to individuals and how they like to work. There might be folks that like to work weird hours. There might be people who would rather not, and therefore they have to find a job that's closer to their time zone. But I don't think there should be a barrier to hiring. I think it should definitely be a conversation. And often we don't really need that much in sync time, depending on what your role is and how you need to collaborate. But the more flexible we can be as human beings working together, I think the better our projects will be, because we'll get this giant variety of people and experience. And yeah, I'm loving it. I'm loving working evenings. It's great.
Yeah. Awesome.
But for social life, I never see anyone who hangs out in the evenings, but that's what weekends for.
Exactly. Exactly. I want to move on to a completely new topic just so that we can keep the conversations fresh. I think, there's more questions and areas that we could have gone deeper on, but unfortunately, with the time that we have, I'll just keep kind of jumping along. One thing that I think will be really valuable to talk on is production tools or production management tools like Jira and Confluence. I use daily, and that's for documentation and tasking. I'd love to know if there are any other tools that people use within the games industry that they recommend or that they think are up and coming, or even that they use adjacent to Jira and Confluence to help them. I know there was like a Gantt chart tool that you mentioned, Veronica. Just anything like that. Does anyone have any other tools that might be worth mentioning?
One that came out for us, one of the producers on my team found is Retrium, which is a retrospective software. And I know a lot of places have it, but for us, we have found it really useful to hold, again, like hybrid style meetings where you maybe have some folks in the office, you maybe have some folks coming in, and their whole... a lot of the premise that they're based on is psychological safety and anonymity, which a lot of other tools don't actually provide. You have to sort of, I wrote this thing, or it's kind of easy to find who wrote what. But with Retrium, you can submit things anonymously, you can vote on them anonymously, and that preserves kind of, the intent is that people are more honest, more open. We have found it useful for other things. We use it to collect playtest feedback. We use it to collect like document and design document feedback asynchronously. We found that it's a great asynchronous place for folks to put their feedback together, and it still gives us all of the same tools to kind of lump like things together, to vote on things and plus things that we're really excited about, and then export it out to our various, you can like export it out to Atlassian products now, which is pretty cool. So it can tie a little bit deeper in. So it's been interesting also that we kind of have more tools now that do one, maybe two jobs, versus before I think we all were trying to like, Jira does all the things or Atlassian does all the things, stay in the ecosystem. But now you tend to have a little bit of different things for different purposes. And I have at least found in my experience, people can chafe against it a little bit because you don't want to have to remember where do I put things. But to ease and bridge that gap between remote folks, long distances, we also have folks all over, in different time zones. People are slightly more willing to try a thing if it's going to enable that communication, that planning, that document and requirement gathering, iteration, feedback loop. But yeah, I just wanted to give some props to Retrium because it's been amazing for us.
Yeah, awesome. What was the name of that Gantt chart website as well? Because I thought that was neat, just to
I will find it real quick.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other tools, Claire?
Yeah, we use Notion. So we actually were on Confluence for a while, and then we made a test switch to Notion and loved it. It's a little bit like Miro, but for docs. So kind of like Google Docs, but more... you can kind of see where people are doing, where they're editing, so it's a little bit more interactive. The other thing that I really, really love about it is the fact that you can really nicely embed in Miro boards. It takes a little bit of setup, it is there natively, but if you because of the privacy settings on Miro boards and stuff, so there's a bunch of back-end settings that you can put up that allows you to see Miro boards in Notion, and it also allows you to cross-reference Jira cards as well. So it takes a bit of setup, but I really have enjoyed using Notion. And the other main one that we really have been kind of we kind of experimented with Notion in project management for a while and then switched back to Jira. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Notion is perfect for project management at all. It's got a long way to go, but it's very, very good for documentation. In terms of a place to host documentation, and it's extremely useful for cross-referencing.
Yeah, awesome. And emojis from what I've seen. There's lots of emojis in Notion. John, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so obviously we're talking about the bigger suites, right? So Jira, Confluence, and things like that. We mentioned Miro, which is really great for whiteboarding. We've found that the design team has been using that a lot more. I don't necessarily use it for production planning, anything like that. But I did want to give a couple mentions to for smaller size teams, because I think once you reach a certain scale, Jira just makes sense just for easier tracking and the longer chain of commits and chains of issues you want to keep referenced. But I kind of missed the days of Trello. Trello was great. It's so light forward, just a Kanban board and a can-do attitude, and you just get it done. So I don't want people should remember that still exists. And if you're like a smaller team, like under 10 or like maybe a little bit like between 10 and 20, I think that's a great little tool. It's really lightweight and you can sort of set up however you want, which is great. The one that I was evaluating for a little bit that had we not gone with Jira right away, I maybe would have tried to pitch it is Codex. I don't know how many people are familiar with that one, but it's interesting. So I think some other, like a lot of these software tools, like game developers tried to make a game, and then I don't know if it necessarily took off, and then they had these cool software tools that they've been marketed. I mean, that's what Slack is, right? Slack they tried to make an MMO, and they had a chat protocol, which is a great tool, like whatever. But Codex is kind of cool. It's very similar in terms of like you're building decks of tasks, and then you sort of use this like kind of decks of cards and terminology to sort of help you track how features are progressing and things like that. I like the interface. I like sort of how it was set up, but we had already started pre-production, so it was like kind of too late to do a switch. I'd be interested in maybe like seeing if we do like a small game jam or prototype phase that I could try and check it out a little bit more thoroughly. But it looks cool. So I would toss it out there for anyone who's sort of like shopping around and looking for a smaller, lightweight, because Jira is kind of a thing. It's a whole ethos that you have to sort of like begin, and life is short, close your tasks, all that stuff, and you're going to have to just deal with all that jank and jargon. And so maybe you want to like save some gray hairs and go with something a little bit more lightweight and not so serious.
Yeah. It is interesting though, because trends happen quite fast. A couple of years ago when Slack kind of emerged, like Miro, for example, I don't know if a year ago anyone mentioned that, whereas it is on the top of a lot of people's minds right now. And I'm curious to know in the next year how much further along we're going to explore these tools as ways to communicate. So moving on to another question, and talking about like a more digital future that we're going in, I'd love to know if everyone still uses a notepad and pen. I think this is a really interesting question, if people have kind of moved their note-taking and reminders digitally, or so it looks like everyone's kind of got notebooks. Is anyone in the call an advocate for digital note-taking and digital reminders?
Hey.
Okay, go Claire, and then John, you can speak on it after.
I mentioned earlier, we use Discord, but I use like a personal Discord channel that I have just to myself for like all my notes and reminders of things. And I've got like different channels for stuff as well. So it's like literally just me in this Discord. It's me just talking to myself, like putting all these things in these channels, reminding myself of things. And I got a bot as well that reminds me of things. And it's because I'm always on Discord. So I'm always like on there for work. And so I've just got my own channel that has all my reminders and all my links and all my things that I need to do. So I love that.
That's awesome. And John?
All right, probably going to be a heathen here, but my desktop is littered with .txt files, just a date, a name, and then in there is just all of my shorthand that then gets converted into like full-on Google Docs that then get distributed or then converted into tasks or into emails for like, here's the actions from our meeting. For a while I was using Google Docs, but then like that's fine. But there's nothing short than just quickly have a keyboard shortcut, open up text, just and start jamming down. Even now, like before this meeting, when you're starting to go over like here's the agenda, I'm like all in a text doc, so it's all there.
It is faster, isn't it? And
it's so quick. And then if I don't need it, just delete it. I don't care about it anymore. It's gone.
I don't want to see your desktop. Just throw it all into a folder. Zia, what do you use?
I was just going to say, I actually like my Kanban board. There's must do this week, then things that aren't urgent at all, and there's just a thought dump. And then there's a dump. Great. And it's great. Anything I need to ask, anything I need to remember, whether it's a task or just a thought, it just goes there. And sometimes better than a notebook, as much as I like just pen and paper.
I mean, as much as I raise my notebook proudly, I also have a OneNote.
Yeah.
That is daily notes on OneNote and a personal Trello board. So.
The craziest one I've heard is someone would email themselves, and then they got an app that could like have them remind me, so the email like it will like forward it back to them like in 3 days, and like to me that's too much. I'll take my notepad and text documents.
I think the greatest thing I did was divorce myself from email as much as possible in the last 5 years. It's made my life so much easier.
that's a good trend, I think, as people are moving away from emails. And I think it's usually the producers that try there's some producers out there that use email as a primary form of communication. And I do think that that's on the way out. I think that's a trend that we can be sure, no one's mentioned email at all during this panel so far. It's definitely on the way out. John, you disagree?
I want to hear Veronica's thing, but I have a funny thing with emails that I would like to, yeah.
A quick thought is I love all the different options because it speaks to everyone's different communication styles, right? And isn't that what we as producers think about all the time? How do I talk to you? How do I talk to you? How do I talk to you? What works for you? I work with a producer who loves email because of the way that it allows them to structure their thoughts and get things out in long form and sort of leave it for people to process when they're ready to process it. And it's great because it's not for me, but it works for others, and that's cool. And I just love hearing everybody's ideas because it just speaks to, how we are all really here to just enable a lot of different humans to make one thing together.
Yeah. So, at the start of the call, we talked a little bit about the issues with Slack and the drive for instantaneous communication. So what I started kind of embracing a little bit for things where we were planning meetings, we were hey, we're going to have a meeting soon, but here, rather than dumping it in Slack where here's the agenda or here's sort of the preamble we want everyone to digest, we've been moving those to Google Docs and then trying to dispense them via email. So that way, again, like Veronica says, when you get an email, the etiquette or the social norms aren't that you have to respond to it immediately. There's usually a 24 to 48 hour window where there's acceptable response time to an email. And so for things that don't demand an immediate decision making point, I think email is great of hey, here's a dump of information that I need everyone to sort of get through at some point. And then at some point when everyone's had a chance to read and respond, we'll book a meeting and make a choice. And so I've been trying to use that. It's also very great for office announcements, right? Hey, here's the holiday PTO stuff. Doing it in the Slack is one thing, but then it gets buried over time, right? So there's just all information coming all the time. Whereas emails, those broader company-wide things are a lot easier to disseminate. But emails suck, right? I'm not going to lie. Emails aren't great. My inbox constantly has 500. It's whatever.
I remember we set up we set up ShotGrid, and within 24 hours of setting it up, I had 300 emails that ShotGrid there's and Confluence as well just sends me just and I could set it up in my notifications to not email me, but I just don't care about email enough to it just starts piling up. But yeah, that's interesting.
Most of the time, I just use my email address to sign into apps.
Yeah, that's true. That's what email addresses are for now. I use a Gmail to sign into my iCloud account. So that's all emails are good for. One thing I just wanted to mention, the Gantt chart tool that I mentioned earlier, Veronica messaged it to me. It's Tom's Planner. So if you're wanting to create a real quick Gantt chart, Tom's Planner is really great and easy to use and simple. I just wanted to mention that. We've mentioned some really great tools in this panel, by the way, that anyone listening would have so many things to investigate. So I really love that. We are kind of slowly running out of time, and one topic I do think would be fun to talk about is the topic of fun. Obviously, working remotely, you want to connect with your team. You want your team to connect with each other. I'd love to know what some of you do for fun in terms of things that aren't directly work related, but as a way to kind of bond with your team, whether it's team activities and things like that. What does anyone do that's interesting that could be worth sharing with everyone else? Ed?
I'm gonna jump here. We do have a group of people inside the company that we call the Culture Club. And this is our CEO, general manager, and some people from the team who spending the time to actually help us as a studio to do things together because, we're full remote. So we have a lot of different things like niche talks, lunch and learns. Sometimes there's movies or people playing games on Discord. But this group, they always come with some things. And because we're doing this live game, we always have milestones from time to time. So there's always celebrations going on. And usually these are the people, when they see the team, we can feel when the team is a bit quiet or they're a bit tired. They try to create things in the channel. One of these days, people are starting making funny things with one of these AI tools that is the big new thing now. And then, this big conversation started, everybody had the mood lift. So this is a good thing to do. Like if there's people inside your company that have the energy to spend the time to invest in the culture, that's cool, because in the end, everybody's so busy with a bunch of different stuff. But we know that group of people, they always thinking, okay, what else we can do this month to celebrate? And this could be just a day to celebrate anything, to be honest, but always thinking about the human side, right? We even have now, I think they say in English, mindfulness day.
Yeah,
Sorry,
mindfulness day, yeah.
Yes, so this is awesome. Like we're actually asking the team, it's super optional, but stop, take a break, go to this thing here and relax. So all these little things that usually we'll not think because we're so busy with our work, it's all thanks to the culture club. So just a good suggestion to have people, thinking about the human side of the team.
Yeah, a bunch of things that I just want to rattle off that that when we kind of prepped for this, that people mentioned were like tabletop simulators, playing Among Us, playing Fall Guys now that it's free, doing game jams within your team. That could be really valuable from like a company perspective as well. Playing games like Jack in the Box. On any of those things, is anything anyone wants to? Claire, you have something to say?
Yeah, that's like all we do. Like even when we're in office, like we'll have a couple of the people who are like working from home, and they'll join us playing Among Us on like Friday drinks. So it's more often than not like after sprint review, we'll have like a charcuterie board and some drinks, and then like we'll play either Jackbox games, which some people like to like spectate and join remotely. We also have a bunch of people who play tabletop simulator. So I think the most popular game is like One Night Ultimate Werewolf. They often play because it's really easy, because you just got to have your headphones on and you just can't see other people's screens, which is fine. And then Among Us as well. Like those are like the three main ones that we play almost weekly or bi-weekly.
Awesome. What do you do, Veronica?
We also have a phenomenal studio ops manager that helps us with a lot of these things. And, I wanted to kind of plus what Ed said is just having the people in the studio that, I think at least as I was coming up through production, a lot of those things tended to fall to producers, especially women and female identifying folks. And, actually engaging the team and asking them to say like, hey, what do you want to lead? So for example, our studio ops manager started this thing in the studio called affinity groups, and that allows employees to kind of choose, what they want to do and kind of get together on similar topics. For example, not kidding, right before this, I was DMing a D&D campaign for our TTRPG affinity group, but there's also ones for activism, for parents and caregivers, for LGBTQ+ folks, and allowing kind of independent activities to also pop up that aren't always organized by like some central authority. And I think enabling folks to self-organize and entertain themselves, however it is that they want to entertain themselves, I think also leads to kind of enabling everyone to feel like they're part of creating good culture. But it's also great to have folks that are truly passionate about it and can kickstart that and light that fire.
Yeah. Zia, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I want to diverge a little bit here. It's not actually a fun thing, but it's something that the studio I work for has introduced. And it's, I think, an incredible resource if you want to give your staff any benefit. And that is this app called Spill, which is actually a mental health app. And behind the app are actual trained professional mental health professionals who and the app has all of these different things, like you can book a one-on-one in-person session, you can get a really thoughtful reply on some of your issues you have. They have all of the different apps for managers, how you can check in on your team, etc. It's a really incredible resource, and I'm super grateful that we have it. And in a time of COVID and everything that's going on in the world, I feel it's incredible thing to give to your staff if you can.
How do you spell that, sorry?
Spill, like spill the beans, like okay. SPILL.
Nice, yeah. Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
They're currently like UK time based, but I think they're expanding. And if there's anything else similar to that, I would recommend looking into it.
Yeah, I feel like this might be something that becomes more of a trend. Maybe there is like it could be spill, like that really impacts most studios around the world, that they just kind of include that within their fleet of software and things that they use that solve specific problems. And that is something I haven't seen much of in the last couple of years, but with the increased amount of remote work and mindfulness and personal development and things like that, this is definitely a space that kind of needs that player to take ownership of. So that's really cool.
Did I say?
Yeah.
It has a Slack integration.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's the thing, is all of these apps, whatever becomes a trend in the next year or two, like there will be integrations between Slack, between Jira, between Discord. I think that's one thing that I don't see often is a lot of Discord integration with a lot of apps, that might be something Discord does in the next year. And if they improve their threading feature, they'll probably change a lot how people use them. So yeah, that's really interesting. We're kind of running out of time, and there are a couple of questions that I want to ask from the audience. So if you are in the audience, do you have any final questions? Now's the perfect time to ask. I'll just read these off, and then someone can jump in and answer it. So what sorts of things do you use for informal catch-ups and general connection / getting to know team members? It can be a struggle when remote working. So things informally, what does everyone use?
So we tried an app, a bot thing that you could get in for Slack. It was called I think Coffee Time, or where basically everyone would sub into a channel, you join into it. So it was opt-in, which is great. I think that's always very key, that these sort of endeavors need to be opt-in. And at the beginning of the week, you would randomly pair people up, and then they would have to schedule a time to do a coffee, get your coffee, sit down and have a chat. And that worked pretty well for a while, but with COVID, it was still pretty hard to get people to opt in, and I don't know, it was. I know some people use it, but it was just a constant struggle to try and get more people to to partake. So I think it's tough what is going through, and it's been exacerbated by the nature of the world as of late. But the one thing we've encouraged, which is I mentioned it a little bit earlier, was that huddle feature on Slack. I think anytime you're having a conversation, even if it's more than a few sentences, just hop on a quick call. You don't need the voice, you don't need the video. Sorry, you can just have someone else's voice. And the other cool thing about the huddle feature is that it broadcasts it, right? Assuming you're doing it in one of the public channels, it broadcasts, hey, John and so-and-so are talking. And so for us, we do all these tiny breakout channels for feature work. So we have a new feature, so we'll make a new channel just for that feature to focus on it. Oh, John and so-and-so are talking and they're hey, can I hop in? And yeah, hop in, listen in. It's a big deal. So that little connection helps a lot.
That's a great answer, John. And I'm going to move on to the next question. Sorry if anyone else wants to add to that, but we've only got a couple more minutes left. Next question is, when we refine sprints into daily tasks, it starts to fall apart when things take longer than expected. Tips to getting those daily schedules together. So advice for refining sprints into daily tasks. Does anyone have any advice that they could share?
I think that one thing that we always try is we can have kind of every single day mapped out, and that gets really challenging because you don't know what's going to come up, especially when you're in an iterative part of the process where newfound work can come up. What we've found has worked is instead treating, at least for our group, is treating time as a bucket and saying, hey, here's where we want to be at the end of the bucket. And rather than trying to opt for very clear daily tasking, I need to be here at the end of the day, it's I need to be here at the end of the week, or I need to be here at the end of the sprint. And that can surprise you positively, where sometimes people have time left over and they can move on to the next thing. Or it allows you to feel really clever when some unexpected iteration comes up and something takes longer or newfound work has happened. And it can still feed into that classic sprint or Scrum style where at the end of the sprint, you reevaluate, adjust things, pull in new work and replan and kind of cascade that down. So I think for me, I found that not stressing so much about the daily, but thinking more about the sprint or more about the milestone can help that be more predictable.
That's a really great answer. Thanks for
here.
Yeah, big agree. Being more goal oriented than task oriented is super important.
And use story points for sizing days.
Story points.
For a while we switched off of time and we went to points, and that worked really great. We eventually had to switch it back because a person's team couldn't grok points, which is unfortunate because the programmers loved it and it worked great for them. But yeah, because like if you're managing time, then you're managing wrong. Is kind of like an axiom in the production community, and I think it's true, right? Like we want to be thinking more about like where do we want to be.
Yeah, we've been using story points as well, and it's been really helpful. Like no more time or days. This is not a good way of tracking tasks.
Effort. It's all about effort.
Yeah,
we use time, but we know it's not real time. It's fancy.
It's like
fancy time. It's like time.
This is one day.
That's interesting. Awesome. And last question that's come through. I love that answer, by the way, and it made me realize we haven't spoken much about like on the ground production advice, things like that. So I'm really glad we at least had some advice that came through on that topic. Last question is, how have teams integrated goal setting within developers to help them skill up in a remote environment? Often important for PMs to plan for PDs. Goal setting within developers to help them skill up in a remote environment. So I guess like training. Yeah, go Ed. Yeah. What thoughts do you have?
We just started a professional development day at CloudHead. It's actually been 2 days we did that. So basically now every lead knows that everybody below them, they have one Friday of the month to spend in anything they want to research. So 8 hours of the day. So basically everybody can do that in the studio, by the way. It's the leads as well. It's just that I'm thinking more in the people who usually don't have a lot of time to think about what else they want to do. But we make sure the leads talk to everybody in the one-on-ones to like, what else would you like to study? And then the company basically make a lot of things available like masterclass, course, workshops, GDC Vault access, books, digital books and all that. So there is a little bit in the leadership management side that's make sure push the team to remember PD Day is coming next week. Make sure you want to know what you want to focus. So now everybody knows in the calendar the next 6 months we have a specific Friday. We are avoiding milestone deliverables close to that. So everybody's feeling more like, okay, I know I have this day to prototype something, to study something that I don't know, maybe research another engine. So you need, when we present the new schedule for the next 6 months of the project, they know we have these little gaps that they can take a break and focus on professional development. So this needs to be hammered down in their heads, like way before, so people have the time to think about, okay, what else I want to research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of all the time that we have, but is there any like very quick other addition that anyone else wanted to add? We're good? Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, go John.
One thing, so we recently, as a company, we started offering education credits, reimbursement to everyone on the team. So every year there's like a certain allotment, it's pretty substantial, and so we're encouraging everyone to sort of like seek, take extra college courses, and that doesn't even necessarily have to be game dev related. Like, hey, I got a liberal arts degree, and it's been proven to be very useful. So I'm a proponent for liberal arts.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Great little message to end on. I think that is another really interesting topic that we probably could have talked at length to. But I do really appreciate all of your times and all of the topics that we spoke about today. I hope it was valuable to those in the audience. Please let us know. On my Twitter, @CarlsContent, my pinned tweet at the moment is all of the handles of all the panelists here. So if you want to go follow them and engage with them, feel free to go do that. And if you have any follow-up questions about the projects that they're working on or just production in general, feel free to reach out to them there. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. So, yeah, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.